Hi guys, welcome back to another Q&A session. In this video, we're going to be looking at the effects of the pandemic on the property market as requested by some of you guys. So let's just get straight into it then. So going back to March 2020, how when the pandemic first hit in the UK, how did it affect the property market and what impact did it have back then?
Well, initially, when there was talk of a pandemic back in January, February, it sort of started slowing down a little bit, and then obviously in March, when we went into the first lockdown, which was, it was a bit unknown to people. It was lockdown, but no one knew whether they could go to work. They couldn't, and things like that. That sort of affected the property market a little bit, and some of the deals that were supposed to go through didn't go through. Some people pulled out of the deals that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But then, soon as obviously the market opened back up, there was a big surge in the deals, and it was better than even before the pandemic. Which was unheard of, because the growth before the pandemic was really, really good, especially in places like Liverpool.
Yeah.
So it went right back up, and we all thought that that's because of the lockdown, and it's just basically like a back date of the deals that were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to happen, but it just kept going and going. So it kept going up, and then obviously second lockdown came, and by the second one, because there were like different tiers before and stuff, people were a bit more understanding of the situation and what can and can't be done. So it sort of stayed at that level, I'd say. So far, 2020, I think, was a great year for property market, regardless of the pandemic or no pandemic. But I think there was growth, definitely.
Okay. So we looked at the impacts, the immediate impacts of when the pandemic first hit the UK, it first hit the property market. Then you talked a little bit about what happened kind of after that first phase when we moved out of the, I guess, the freshness of the pandemic, where we didn't know, and once people were a bit more familiar with it, we saw a bit of a change in the market. But obviously we're almost a year into it now. What is the current market like right now, almost a year after the pandemic hit?
Well, to be honest, it's a little bit hard to assess at this moment in time, because typically December and January are quiet months in it. Well,
In anything really, isn't it?
Yeah. But unless you're in retail or hospitality. I mean, except for this year,
Yeah.
any other industry, it'll be quiet in December and January. So you can't. I mean, it's been okay. It hasn't been back to the heights that it was, 2-3 months ago. But it's it's good for a January, if you like. So far, there's nothing to suggest that there's a decline, even though it might be coming. But at this moment in time, it seems pretty normal.
So right now, in January 2021, we're in right now. Would you say this January 2021, although we're in a pandemic, has been better than, for example, January 2020 or 2019?
I'd say probably on par.
On par,
Yeah.
probably the same then. So a year, almost a year into the pandemic, we haven't really seen that much of a change as much in terms of where we're at this stage of the year.
I mean, yeah. So there's different effects on the property market that makes the prices go up, down, and stuff like that. One of them is obviously inflation of the prices.
Yeah.
But that's not the only one. There's also velocity as well,
Yeah.
which is So inflation is obviously, if the price of stuff goes up,
Yeah.
it makes people want to buy more property because your money in the bank doesn't get you any more money. But if you buy property, obviously you increase your net worth. But there's also the velocity as well, which is the measurement of how much people are spending their money. So inflation without the velocity doesn't really affect it that much, but when you got both, that's when you start peaking in the prices. So we'll just have to wait and see how things pan out. But at this moment in time, it looks okay.
Okay. So now let's look at some of the more specific stuff in terms of the property market and buying or selling property. One of the first things that I've seen going around on the internet, and I've also seen questions about, is stamp duty.
Yeah.
First of all, what is stamp duty, and second of all, how has it been effective during the pandemic?
So stamp duty is basically the tax that you have to pay when you buy a property. Now, the level goes up and down depending on the level of the amount you're paying for your property. There's different thresholds. Now, what the government done was they scrapped it for residential properties. So if you were buying a property to live in the past year, and it runs till March this year as well, there's no stamp duty to pay. Now, if you take that into account, say based on just a flat rate of 3%, if you're buying a property for say £300,000, this could be a saving of about £9,000 on the price of your property, which then obviously prompts people to go to market and buy properties. Or if they were thinking of buying one, they may accelerate it now and buy it before end of March 2021.
Okay. So in terms of stamp duty, does it come into play from your very first property that you're buying, or
no? As long as it's your residential, as long as it's not a buy to let. So you could have had a house beforehand, but if you sell that and you're buying your own property for yourself, then you're not paying stamp duty.
And in terms of the rates, does it fluctuate? Does it change?
Yes. Yeah, so it goes. It depends. There's different thresholds, up to 250, over up to 500, and over that and stuff. But all of it is, I think, up to £500,000 is scrapped.
Okay.
So if you're buying a house, I mean, it's fair enough. If you're buying a house over £500,000, you probably could afford to,
afford to pay the stamp duty.
So
anyway.
So that's
okay. So that was stamp duty, and another thing I've seen a lot of now, when you're buying a property mortgage, what are the mortgage rates like right now? What have they been like over the past year? But what are they like right now? And is it worth going and looking at mortgages or not right now?
Definitely. I mean, the rates are as low as I've seen them, to be honest. I think you can get below 2% at the moment on buy-to-lets, or sometimes residential as well. So I'd say that's another contributing factor, and I think it prompts people to sort of go and buy a house, because you're basically borrowing the money for less than the inflation, which is great. So that's where you make your money, really. If you're buying a 200 grand house and you're borrowing the money, say 180,000 at 2%, where the inflation is 3.5, already you're making 1.5%. So it's a good time to buy.
So right now, you'd say is probably the best time to buy a property. No stamp duty, mortgage rates are at the lowest you've ever seen. So I'm guessing up to 500 grand. If you can afford that, go for the house.
I mean, it a little bit depends on individual circumstances. It just depends where you are. A lot of people during this pandemic have lost their jobs. So that is one factor that sort of pulls it back. Everything's sort of pushing everything forward. No stamp duty, low rates, all that sort of stuff. But the thing is, a lot of people that are on, say, furlough scheme now, you don't know what's going to happen with them or how long this sort of lockdown is going to sort of carry on. It just depends on, if there was a clear plan to say, it's there till like mid-February, then we're out, then 100%. But for now, if you're, what I would say is, if you're 100% about your sort of future, then it's the right time to buy a house.
If you're 100% about your future, then there's 100% going buy property.
100% going buy property.
But going back to a point you made, the uncertainty about people's jobs, is that a playing factor in getting a mortgage then?
It is, yeah. I mean, a lot of lenders now, they look at, whether you've been on the furlough scheme or not. And if you have, some of them are hesitant. It might result in going to a different lender where, you pay a little bit more on the interest and stuff. It's just, you got to look at it by individual sort of
circumstance.
Because not all the ones that are on furlough are going to have an issue keeping their job, or they might have other streams of income and stuff like that. It just depends on the individual, really.
Okay, so we looked at how it started, how it went, how it is now. Asked a few specific questions about the effects of the pandemic on certain things, such as stamp duty, mortgage rates, and mortgageability. So to bring it all to a bit of a close now, how do you see it panning out? How do you see the whole, in the situation we are, how do you see the pandemic panning out in terms of the property market?
Like I said, I mean, if there was a clear plan, I mean, when we first started back in March 2020, it was supposed to be a 2-week lockdown, 2-3 week lockdown, and then after that there was the boom in the market because everyone was sort of pretty much back to work and stuff. Now we're in the 3rd lockdown, and there's talks of could be till March, could be, you never know. I'd say if there was a clear plan, I'd 100% see 2021 being the biggest,
even a bigger year.
Yeah. So far, where we are now, I'd still think that there's going to be growth, and for a lot of people, it is going to be their best year yet. But some people are going to have a hard time. With regards to property market, I'd still think there's going to be a healthy growth, personally, because what you've got to take into account is the factors that affect the property market. Like I said, one is inflation, which is going to be there because of Brexit and all the other aspects. So
Brexit, which we won't get into, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss that in another video. But so you got Brexit, inflation is basically there. The velocity is gonna be there because a lot of the people who, say for example, wanted to sort of buy a house and move in together, or like get married or whatever, they haven't been able to do so for the past year. So all that, so 2020 plus 2021 are all going to happen in the same year. So there's going to be velocity, there's going to be inflation, and then you've got supply and demand. So over the last year, a lot of the developers have held on and haven't done the developments that they wanted to do. Which means that a lot of the supply that was supposed to be here now isn't, which means the demand is higher. So all these point out to having a really, really good year in the property market in 2021.
Okay, so that I guess that's it then. There were some of the questions that were online and were asked regarding the pandemic, COVID-19, and the effects it has on the property market. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe for our future videos. And if you got any questions or any recommendations for any other videos, make sure you comment it down below, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.